whenever we talk of atomic energy or nuclear power, there is radioactivity associated with the same, and there are some sort of fears, some sort of misconceptions. And during discussions, usually 3 types of misconceptions or fears are there. First one, that is related to the feeling that radiation is going to harm human life. Second one, nuclear power stations may leak radioactivity and this may be dangerous. Third one, spent fuel which is coming out of the nuclear reactors is going to be a permanent hazard or permanent problem. What I will try to do is explain to you scientifically and try to see how this story is little different compared to the fears that we usually have. Let us start with the first fear, which I mentioned, that radiation will harm human life. So this fear started almost 100 years back by a brilliant geneticist, Professor Hermann Muller. He, in 1920s, irradiated fruit flies with X-rays, and he found that offspring of those irradiated flies had visibly different or strikingly different type of characteristics, and it was all attributed to the fact that from the parents some genetic mutations had taken place and it affected the children as well as grandchildren of the flies. This was a very novel and a great work, and Professor Muller was awarded with Nobel Prize in 1946. Now in 1950s, US was constructing a large number of nuclear reactors, and they needed some help in forming the radiation standards related to safety. The request was made to Professor Muller to provide the advice. Professor Muller had a feeling that even the tiniest amount of radiation may result into genetic changes, and as a result of that, the standards, safety standards which were drafted ensured that people working in the radioactive environment, that is nuclear power station workers or other radiation workers, they receive minimum amount of dose. Gradually, these standards were adopted all over the world, and finally, India also adopted it. Now, there was some problem in this particular standard. The data which Professor Muller had was relatively less, I would say it was relatively less extensive for low dose. Most of the data was available for high dose and intermediate dose level. But it was extrapolated to the low dose level also, and as a result of that, subsequently, when additional data got available from nuclear plant workers, lab workers, patients undergoing radiotherapy, patients undergoing CT scan, it was found that low dose radiations do not cause tweaking of genes, and it can be considered to be reasonably safe. Even our bodies have got natural mechanisms to correct if there is any genetic tweaking taking place. So still, people have not been fully convinced, and as a result of that, the old standards which were adopted in early 50s are still in vogue, and anybody outside nuclear field, they have a feeling that radiation worker may always get subjected to, they have a risk of cancer, but in my personal opinion, for low dose radiation, whatever are the prescribed limits, these fears are not very much well founded. Now we come to the second fear. Anytime a new plant site is opened up for construction of nuclear power stations, people living around the plant, they have a fear that some radioactivity leakage may take place and it may be affecting their health. In India, the radiation safety standards are implemented and prescribed by Atomic Energy Regulatory Board. If you see the public, which is not part of nuclear workers, the maximum dose in the full year is 1 millisievert, that is 1 millisievert per year. If you compare it with the natural background, which we all get dose because of cosmic rays or some sort of radioactivity which may be there in the food that we eat, we get almost 2 times more than the maximum prescribed dose. If you consider a normal chest CT scan, we get about 6 to 7 millisieverts just in about 15-20 minutes of time. And the other doses, whatever are prescribed by AERB, is 1 millisievert in the full year. So you can understand the difference is comparatively very large. If there is a radiation worker, the dose limits are higher, and in case of an emergency, dose limits are still higher. It is just like this, that smoke is harmful to us, but if fireman is trying to extinguish the fire, he definitely gets subjected to more amount of smoke, and it is not really certainly going to be fatal for the person. Now, what is the confidence? Why I am telling with confidence this particular type of data that 1 millisievert is not harmful? This is because of the fact that institutions like Tata Memorial Centre, they carry out epidemiology study year after the year. They have the data, and this data shows that there is no abnormal rise in the people working within the plant as well as living in the outside townships and so on. There is no abnormal increase in the cancer incidence. So, once again, in my opinion, the low dose is not going to be affecting human health in any significant way. We come to the third fear, which is related to spent fuel. Yes, spent fuel which is coming out of the reactor is a concern. Spent fuel, when it comes out, it is going to have high amount of radioactivity. But the way India treats the spent fuel, it changes the picture in a very different manner. A country like USA, they decide that this fuel will be buried, while India and similarly the countries like France and Russia, they reprocess the fuel. Reprocessing is a complex technology which has been mastered by India, and it consists of dissolving the entire spent fuel and then removing the parts like reusable parts like uranium and plutonium, and even extracting some of the radioisotopes which can have societal application. If you just consider 1 ton of fuel, it would have generated about 33.6 million kilowatt hours of electricity. Large amount of electricity is generated just from 1 ton of fuel. And you find that more than 99% is uranium and plutonium. Part of it can be stored very safely, and part can be reused in the reactor. Isotopes like strontium-90, cesium-137, ruthenium-106, americium-241, these are also useful isotopes. They can be used in blood irradiator, they can be used for making plaques for cancer treatment, and material like americium-241 can be used for deep space mission in case if ISRO requires it. So all I'm trying to convey here is the spent fuel, if the country decides there is a policy to reprocess the fuel, it is not only recycling, but it can have an innovative uses as well. Now you may wonder, why is it I'm trying to tell these type of things, trying to give clarification. We are all living through the time of climate change. Global average temperature has been continuously increasing, and all the countries on the call of United Nations, they are trying to make sure that the global temperature rise is less than 1.5 degrees Celsius from the pre-industrialization days. As a result of that, polar ice caps and glaciers are melting. We have extremely erratic rain patterns. Sometimes we have floods, sometimes we have severe droughts. As a result of melting of the ice, sea levels are rising, and it is creating difficult situation in islands as well as coastal areas. So, what really is the culprit? As you already know, the main culprit is carbon dioxide that is being let out into the atmosphere as we are burning coal, we are burning oil and gas. Now, if you compare nuclear power station, when it operates, when it is generating electricity, it is not generating any amount of carbon dioxide. Nuclear power is the cleanest and the most concentrated source of power. Now, obviously, solar and wind are very vital, but both these sources of power, they are intermittent or unpredictable, as well as they are land hungry. If you see, solar power is going to be available only during the daytime, otherwise you may have to make provisions for storage of the solar power. Similarly, the land requirement for a 1000 megawatt electric nuclear power station is 1 mile square. In comparison, the solar power station will need approximately 45 times more power, and wind will require still more power. As on today, the nuclear power generation in India is small. It is just about 8 gigawatt electric. Government of India has given a call that it has to be increased to 100 gigawatt electric by 2047. This is 12-fold increase. It's a very large increase. Do we have an option? No, we do not have an option, and it is because of two major reasons. We have sort of pledged that by 2070, the Honorable Prime Minister has indicated that by 2070, India will reach the net zero carbon footprint, which means we will not produce any more carbon dioxide than what we can absorb within the forest cover available within India. Unless we till we keep burning coal, we will not be able to meet this particular pledge that is what has been given by the country. There is another reason. India, the Human Development Index is relatively low, and 1.4 billion persons of India, if we want to improve their quality of life, unless we add large amount of clean energy into the system, because HDI, Human Development Index, depends very much on the energy consumption as well as the electricity availability. So unless we add large amount of clean energy into the system, we will not be in a position to make our India as a developed country. So in my personal opinion, there are not many options available excepting adopting nuclear if we want to follow both the, I would say, parameters which I said regarding net zero as well as increase in HDI index. So what would I like to sort of take away for you? Number one, if we have an unreasonable fear of radiation, we will not be able to set up nuclear power stations, and we may be stuck with fossil fuel, less amount of fossil fuel, and subsequently possibly less development. Fear of radiation is there, but the science gives you different facts. My request to all the listeners is, please check the data on your own. Try to have discussions with people who understand nuclear energy. Discuss it with me. And if you find whatever I have told to be correct, I have mentioned 3 things. First thing is, low dose radiations are not harmful. Number 2, the regulators in India, they are very strictly vigilant about operation of nuclear power station. And number 3, spent fuel is, if you subject it to reprocessing, it is not a problem. If you find this statement to be correct, please spread the word. Let us try to make all possible efforts to increase nuclear power generation by 2047. Thank you very much, and Jai Hind.